people of the World Wide Web. So it's Cypher Sigma, it is Saturday, and I think we're on movie 61 of the year that I've seen. Obviously not all these are new movies, but as you can tell from the title, is Ridley Scott's latest movie, Gladiator 2. So anybody who does or doesn't know, this is a continuation of the story from Gladiator 1, the first one starring Maximus Decimus Meridius, and this is basically the kind of his son going through a very similar story as far as I can wear. Now, to forewarn everyone, I've seen Gladiator I think once, maybe twice. It was over 10 years ago. I can't remember a lot, and I didn't revisit it for this. For me, I wanted it to go in to be a fresh experience, and I didn't want to link too much. Anybody who has or hasn't seen the trailer, essentially this brings forward Paul Mescal. He's Lucius. He is the son of Maximus. From the first movie, we have Connie Nielsen, the only returning character, as far as I could tell, playing Lucia, basically Maximus' wife. We have Pedro Pascal as Marcus Acacius, Joseph Quinn as Emperor Geta, and Fred Herrington as Cacacia. If I pronounce those right, apologies. With obviously Denzel Washington as Marcius, and then obviously directed by Ridley Scott. And the premise, there is nothing after the credits or something like that, so you can go. The premise of this movie, exactly as it said, after the events of the first movie, the son is basically being hunted. He goes, he hides, he makes a life for himself. Unfortunately, the new emperors of Rome have decided to be very selfish and want to basically take over the world. Their armies go to the shores of where Lucius is now living with his wife. They are attacked, his wife is killed, and he is basically taken prisoner. He is then taken upon to be a gladiator in the games. And basically working his way through to get the head of the person who killed his wife, with a kind of overthrowing tyranny hierarchy thing going on in the background. What did I think of this movie? I think it was all right. Visually, it looks very nice. I do have a fair few issues with the movie, which I'll get into, but we'll put the spoiler warning up now and we shall get into it. So as the movie starts really well. It's kind of like an oil painting, and it kind of summarises the first film by showing the scenes, but in a very blurred effect. I really, really liked this. It did bring back some memories of the first movie, but as I said, it's been over 10 years since I've seen it, so I don't remember too much apart from the normal kind of clips that you would see from a Gladiator 1. Then obviously fast forward, you have Lucius as a child, and obviously trying to or basically him being an adult. We don't kind of really know where he comes from at first, even though the trailer kind of gives away what it is. He has his wife, they kind of have this happy life, but the Romans are attacking, and then you have this big battle scene of these boats coming in to attack. A battle goes on as they're invading inside the walls. Lucius' wife goes to shoot Pedro Pascal's character, misses. He calls the archers to fire in that direction. She gets hit in the heart, falls off the rocks and dies. As she falls off the rocks and dies, Lucius sees it, gets knocked around the back of the head and falls into the water. And then he has this kind of dream sequence where the ferryman is taking her and he's trying to go after her, but obviously she's like, I will see you down there. He wakes up, he's in the water, finds her body, snaps off the end of her arrow, and then Roman soldiers drag him out. Pedro Pascal burns all the dead bodies, basically says, I take this in Rome, and then takes all the slaves back to Rome to obviously be sold, bartered, whatever they want to do. When Pedro Pascal returns, obviously you are then introduced to the two emperors. You have Geta, played by Joseph Quinn, who's the more older, a little bit more mature, but very kind of almost fantasy type kind of all surreal and stuff, but I like this and that. The younger one, Cassius, even though they're twins, he is a little bit, I would say, unhinged, just doesn't really care about anything, just wants to have fun. Those two, they want to destroy, basically take over every nation, and the interactions they have with Pedro Pascal, you learn that he doesn't really want to fight. He is fighting for them out of kind of a agreement with the emperors of, you know, looking after his wife and stuff like this. So he's caught in this kind of struggle. And then you find out that him and his wife being the wife of, or former wife of Maximus from the first movie, that they are constructing a army of 5,000 soldiers, and they're trying to get people online to basically overthrow the council at the end of the Colosseum Games. So there we have the story. The Colosseum Games is what builds up, and at the end of it, there potentially will be this overthrowing. Then the kind of story switches back to Lucius, obviously as he is being, obviously he's thrown in like this pit kind of to fight these baboon type creatures. He shows his worth, and Denzel Washington, who kind of runs this arena, he sees him and takes him on as a gladiator, and then starts to build him up. As you go along, you learn a little bit more of Lucius's character. Obviously Lucius doesn't know that Maximus is his dad at this point, or Lucy is his mum. But he obviously has some thoughts, but he's keeping it all to himself. And then the kind of story leads that he comes into an agreement with Denzel Washington. He's like, you know, Denzel's like, you do what I want you to do, and I'll give you a head. He's like, I want the emperor's head. He goes, I can't give you that. He goes, give me the head of the general of the army, which is obviously Pedro Pascal's character. Obviously Pedro Pascal is actually married to his mum, but there comes in the conflict later on. Then as you go, as things start to move, obviously there's a lot of treachery and stuff that goes ahead, and you have the Colosseum Games. You have the first one where this champion comes out on a rhino and fights a few of these kind of stragglers. Lucius manages to obviously survive and take the person's head, then being kind of the winner of the first game, so to speak. And then a few days later we have this next game where they've magically filled the arena with water, and you have sharks, and you have two sets of armies that are fighting each other. Again, Lucius's side manages to take this, and he almost takes out the emperor's head, even though he's aiming for Marcus's head, the Pedro Pascal character. This kind of sets off a kind of traumatic kind of event, or this cracks start to see going on between this. Lucille realizes that Lucius is her son. She goes to meet with him. This is revealed to Denzel Washington, who uses it to with the emperors. Pedro Pascal goes to rescue Lucille's son, obviously captured, and then this is him and Lucius, and then have to fight with his mum watching. And this is where kind of it all starts to spiral. Obviously Marcus, the Pedro Pascal character, seen as the champion of Rome, and the fact he's now seen as innocent. He's fighting with Lucius and says, you know, like, I am married to your mum, you know, I knew your dad, I fought with him, you know, I don't want to hurt you, blah 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 blah. Kneels on the ground, puts his hand up, said that, you know, I surrender. The emperors decide to kill him anyway, shoot loads of arrows in him. There's a big upturning with the crowd, and this is where the public are starting to overturn. Pedro Pascal is obviously dead, so he's the one that's going to lead the rebellion, so that is kind of thwarted. But then this is where all the outside, the normal citizens of Rome are uprising. The emperors hide away, and during this, it's when Denzel takes his time to convince the younger son that the younger twin, that the older twin is confused. The younger twin kills the older twin with the help of Denzel Washington, and then he brings in Denzel as kind of the acting kind of chairman of the whole of Rome. During this, obviously his mum is Lucius' mum, Lucia, is going to be sacrificed the next day as kind of a testament to Denzel Washington coming into power and stuff like this. This is when Lucius decides to take on the mantle of his dad. With the help of a ring, manages to get the army to march towards Rome, and then you have this kind of final kind of fight that is building up. Lucius is sent out to defend his mum against a load of Roman soldiers with a wooden sword, but due to setting all the other slaves free, they all kind of start overtaking it. It then comes down to him and Denzel after a horse race out of the city. He easily defeats Denzel, and then it's the big of, why should we be fighting each other? Because the invading army that were under Pedro Pascal are on the outside of Rome, and the soldiers that have come from Rome to defend it have kind of met in the middle, and he kind of says, look, we don't need to fight, you know, this is previous, happy ending, hoorah. he kind of grabs, you see him then go back to the arena. His mum is killed, unfortunately, for this scuffle. I forgot to mention that. Apologies. And big spoiler there. Denzel kills his mum during this scuffle, and that's why he chases after Denzel. And then at the end, he kneels to the ground, grabs the sand, and goes, like, remember your dad. And then you have a flashback to Russell Crowe from the first movie where he's putting his hands through the corn. The end. So, what did I think of this movie? I'm going to rate this movie 5.8 out of 10. Now, I've been all over the shop with trying to pin down where I would put this movie. So visual wise, for the most part of the Rome, of the characters, of the acting, it looks quite good. When CG is introduced with the rhino, with the sharks, with a line at one point, and even some of the boat bits, it looks a little bit off. I don't think it was really needed, because when you don't have much CG in there's big settings and stuff like this, and it looks absolutely stunning. Ridley Scott did an amazing job with that. I didn't think the acting was bad across all. I thought they all did well. For me, there was the major kind of thing, and I could probably pull a lot of things apart and why I overrate. So, like, you know, it's nowhere near as good as the first one, but the story of the first one, you have Maximus, and it's kind of all of this focus on him, and obviously you then have the Joaquin Phoenix bad guy character. In this one, it seemed to have a struggle with finding a bad guy. So essentially, first off, it's, you know, Lucius is the good guy, and you have Pedro Pascal call his army to kill his wife, which magically she almost hits him. He goes to his archers, shoot them, a load of them shoot him, and she gets shot in the heart. Take that into note, that he gets shot in the heart. I wouldn't say it's Pedro Pascal that did the shooting, so why you'd necessarily direct it to him. It is what it is. You'd want the person who actually shot her, which is a person shot off scene. Obviously, as you go along and realise that he's married to his mother, then that isn't kind of the bad guy you want. So then you kind of have the emperors. Now you have the older one, the slightly more fantasy type one, I said, the kind of thing that he doesn't seem too bad in the grand scheme. He just needs a better person to kind of guide him. I think that the younger brother is just a nuisance, and the older brother is trying to look after the younger brother. But they don't feel like they're any harm at all. They just feel like kids that are doing their own thing, that probably somebody could have easily stabbed them or killed them or something many a time. You then obviously, they are killed one after the other, and then it leads Denzel Washington to take over the reins, because he has this kind of ulterior motive that is never really concretely spoke about, except for he was kind of a slave of Lucius's grandfather, Lucille's dad. But then in the final fight, Lucius is easily able to take him out, and it doesn't seem like much of a fight. When it came to the games, you have this champion that comes out with 5 or 6 normal gladiators, and apart from him killing one normal gladiator, or once the rhino's taken out, everybody's like, whoa, let's just stand back, let's just let that guy. One bloke throws him a shield, and then he cuts his head off. And it's a bit like, hang on a second, it's all for all. Why were people not getting in his way and taking over and stuff like this? And it and even the CG for the baboons as well, I meant to say that was a bit dodgy. Or it didn't quite look right. I don't know if it's something there. If it was lions or something, it probably would have been a bit more realistic for that time. Who knows? I don't know if rhinos would be, or even sharks. But yeah, it kind of seems like it was finding this villain or finding... I mean, you even had the character who played the dog from Game of Thrones, who's kind of this general near the end of it. And you don't really see him do anything. Like, the Emperor and their surrounding people, they've not got big characters. There's a small fight when Lucius first meets it, and there's this kind of this bulky guy, but it's like this stumbling around. It isn't like it's well orchestrated. It's almost like a bar brawl, whereas it should be a bit better. And that's what I found with this one. It's like there's a lot of elements going on, and they kind of get there from the beginning to overthrow him. They get the story there in the end, and his son gets and I did like that. But it's just a journey that they take, and I say, and not having a proper bad guy, or not having it just, you know, portrayed better, and it all being twists and turns. And first it's Pedro, and then it's this emperor, and then it's this emperor, and then it's Denzel. You know, and oh, you got to fight this gladiator, and there's no real big figureheads to go against it, and it's, you know, this is set over a span of the games, and then you have 2 games that are far apart but nothing else in between. And it seems very much like the story wasn't the greatest. I mean, I did hear Ridley Scott, and they did have a script very early on that was about, after the first movie, they were going to do a second one where Maximus actually goes to like the gods and then goes into the god world, and that's where he is, and then the former god goes back to Earth and he goes back and fight it. I thought that sounded like quite an interesting idea. But anyway, that has been my review of Gladiator 2. Have you seen this movie? What are your thoughts and feelings? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those things you want to do, and I shall see you in the next one.